If I was a Falcons fan right now, I'd be really struggling to find reasons to get really excited about this organization, this team, their path, and their trajectory. As you look at them last year, they could have won the division, but they didn't. They could have played Desmond Ridder all year and actually, done what a smart team would have done, was given him the chance to show what he could or could not do. But instead, they gave Marcus Mariota the majority of the starts because they were stuck on stubborn stupidity. And you look at them now in 2023, how excited are Falcons fans really supposed to be about Desmond Ridder? How excited are Falcons fans supposed to be about a team who year in, year out has a defense that chronically sucks hind tit? How excited are Falcons fans supposed to be about a team that just had a top 8 pick that they invested in a running back in a time where you hear all the time about how running backs aren't that valuable and aren't that important and you don't spend first-round picks on them? And not only did the Falcons spend a first-round pick on one, they took one in the top 8, not even the top 10, the top 8 of the draft. Yikes. I mean, you got to admit, Falcons fans, I got a kind of a point. And I don't think you can really sit there and look at Arthur Smith and his performance these first 2 years and say that they've been any type of banner work. The Falcons just feel like one of those teams right now. They're not bad enough to be shitty enough to make it really matter, but they're just stuck in mediocrity. And that is the absolute worst place to be. Now, talking about the Falcons, they certainly tried to spend money in the offseason like they were trying to stop being mediocre. They gave Jesse Bates III a big money contract to come over to the Bengals and be the anchor in their secondary. They bring in Onyemata from the Saints to man the middle of that defense. They bring in Calais Campbell, signed him a few weeks back, give him a veteran presence on that defensive line. They bring in Mike Hughes to be kind of like a complimentary nickel-dime back on that defense. They bring in Taylor Heineke to be the backup to Desmond Ridder. They signed Mac Hollins, who it looks like could be wide receiver 2 there in Atlanta this year. So they spent some money to try and upgrade a team that needed a lot of upgrading here, but I don't know how much upgrading they really truly did when you look at all those signings combined. In terms of the draft, I've already mentioned them taking Bijan Robinson with the 8th overall pick. There's different mixed feelings there. I would actually say, if the Falcons had a young quarterback established already, and this was a team that really struggled to run, as opposed to them last year where they were actually a pretty good running team, if they were struggling to run the ball and you're like, hey, getting an impact running back here could make this team a lot better in a hurry, then that's one thing. But they don't have their quarterback, and Bijan Robinson's a very talented player. No question in my mind about that. But just especially when you consider the last 2 drafts, they've invested very high picks on offensive skill players, and Kyle Pitts in 2021, and then last year with Drake London. Pitts was the 4th overall pick. London was the 8th overall pick. This time in the 8th overall pick, they took Bijan Robinson. I guess. We'll see what happens. They spent the 2nd round pick on Matthew Bergeron to hopefully take over at one of the guard spots someday. And then, had other picks round 3. Zach Harrison gave him a little more depth at edge rusher. And then you've got Clark Phillips III, which I certainly would assume he's going to be a nickel corner for them and be a good one. But I look at this team, like I said, and I don't see a ton of reason to be excited. I will say I think their running game is going to be really good. You layer Bijan Robinson into that mix. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that he could go in and have a bang-up year and be an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate. That certainly can happen. And if he is, it might change the trajectory for the Falcons just a little bit. I look at their offensive line. They've invested, some premium picks in that over the years. They've invested some money there. I think that offensive line is going to be solid. I don't know if they're spectacular, but they're solid from a foundational standpoint. But there's still quite a number of things I look at this team and I kind of question. I look at the receiving core. You've got Drake London, yes. You've got Kyle Pitts, yes. But what else do you really have? You can say maybe Bijan Robinson out of the backfield. Okay, fair enough. But that's really, to me, my opinion about it. And even then, will they be able to get Pitts in London the amount of targets, the amount of touches that would be necessary in order to justify the high picks that you've invested in both of them. Plus, giving enough carries and enough total touches to a Bijan Robinson to justify the high position that you put into a running, or high draft position you put into a running back. Fair questions to me. And then I look at that defense. Like, I think, the signings of Jesse Bates along with A.J. Terrell being there at corner, that secondary I think could be solid. But who's going to help them stop the run? Who's going to be able to get some pass rush on opposing quarterbacks? Yes, Onyemata will help a little. Calais Campbell, veteran presence, still solid, will help. But I don't think they're going to make that much of a difference. I would expect this defense to still struggle in 2023. Then I look at Desmond Ridder. This guy was a third-round pick in a weak quarterback class. You could make the argument, well, maybe they didn't go to Ridder much and stuck with Mariota most of the year because they thought Ridder wasn't ready and wasn't good enough. And if that's the case, that's kind of a concern. But, you would have liked to have more starts under the belt last year in a lost season, so that way you didn't turn this one into a potentially lost season. I'm not sure what to make of Ridder or not, or whether or not he can really be the guy. I doubt it at this point, but we shall see. In terms of the schedule for the Falcons, I look at weeks 1 and 2. Like, if they want to compete and contend to win the division, which they certainly have a shot here because the NFC South is really bad, weeks 1 and 2, they host Carolina, they host Green Bay. Those, in theory, should be 2 winnable games. You want to build some momentum behind your young quarterback? That's a place to do it, against Carolina and against Green Bay. If the Falcons go 2-0 there, like, they've got some momentum and can start to build a little confidence and start to be thinking about, hey, like, this doesn't have to be a total waste of a season. And then I look at weeks 5 through 10. That's a really big stretch for this team because I see a number of potentially winnable games there. They've got Houston at home, they've got Washington at home, then they go to Tampa Bay, they go to Tennessee, they go to Minnesota, they host Arizona. Like, you look at that, and it's not out of the realm of possibilities to think that the Falcons could go like 4-2 in that stretch. It might go 5-1, could go 3-3. And, just toiling around 500 might be enough to keep you in this divisional race all year. That's a really big stretch of games right there, in my opinion. And then weeks 14 and 15, they host Tampa Bay, and then they go to Carolina. Like, those games could really matter when all's said and done. I don't know that I have the greatest confidence right now in Desmond Ridder. Like I said, I still don't know that I have a ton of great vibes around this Falcons team. But I think they have a chance to win this division. Now, honestly, I spent a little bit of time debating back and forth whether I thought the Falcons, the Panthers, or the Saints would win this division because that's just how bad it is. I almost went with the Falcons because of some of the money they invested in free agency, what they've got at the skill positions, but I just couldn't do it. So I've got the Falcons finishing like 8-9 and coming in second in the NFC South.